started designing this. And she just started kind of composting with community gardens. She was in the community garden movement in like the 70s and the 80s. And when the 90s came up, it started to emerge a lot. And at the same time, Open Road was working in close in hand with Lower East Side College Center. You know, Lower East Side College Center started on 7th Street in the Lower East Side. Earth Matters, Marissa, was also working with us at the time before Earth Matters started, also in the Lower East Side. So we had 3 people who were very influenced and motivated to bring compost to their community garden. That was their goal. It wasn't really for the city. It was like something for the community, and they were using different styles. So Paula started to practice this idea of this design, but she never really tried it, never put it in action. And us as high schoolers or middle schoolers going into high school, we were like the ones to practice with it. So the HotBox has become what it is through years of like changes and influential moments. It went from all wood, and then we built like 2 of them out of plywood, and it rotted after the first cycle, like from the inside out. So everything on the inside was like rotting because of the heat. We made all of what you see as PVCs. We made them all out of wood, little square pieces, and then. So that design didn't work because of the material, but we were getting compost. Then we used, at the time, New York City there were some businesses in New York starting to use kind of like sustainable materials. So they was trying to recycle glass, you know, the city was recycling glass, and this guy, Tom Otterbridge, which is also they call him the father of New York City compost. When New York City compost was here, he was the one that kind of started it. So he started to use material, plastic, recycled plastic, and fiberglass. So it was like glass, but that material was irritating our skin. Like specifically for me, I was like, I don't like using this one so we made a couple of HotBox out of that, but we didn't like it, so we scratched that. Then we started to use sawdust and plastic mixture. That was another company in the city that was doing it, so we used that. It was nice, but it was heavy. But because of the sawdust in time, it kind of bowed, and then it dried out and it kind of snapped. So we stopped using that material too. So then we came to this new all plastic, recycled plastic material. I built one with my team in high school, and in '98, when we found that this was the material that we liked, it was nice, it was smooth, it was easy to cut, it lasted a long time. That's when Open Road patented the design of HotBox, and she put us down as patent designers. So as a high schooler, I became an inventor, which is really cool for me. And then I used this design to graduate from high school. In the high school I went to, they would use a certain thing called portfolios, where you had to create a project, do a research, and then present it. And I used the HotBox as a research. I did 3 mixtures. One mix was wood chip and food waste. Another mix was leaves, dry leaves and food waste. And then hay and food waste. And I went 3 months with 3 HotBoxes, checking the temperature, checking the observation, checking the smells. And the wood chip was the top one. It reached 165, 170 degrees. The other ones also composted, but it just took a long time to get to that hot temperature. And then when you take it out, there was a lot of wet pockets, a lot of small anaerobic moments, but they still did compost. But the wood chip mixture was the best. So I want to back up. This is the 1998, right? So we have this patent of the HotBox. I'm a high school graduate with a research project on this. Tom Otterbridge was hired by New York City to create a research to see if we could bring organic processing, composting to New York. You know, the city has been, trying to do sustainable, diversion for a long time. And I did this research a couple of, last year, just to see, what was New York City's history. And we've been trying to divert and do recycling for a long time. So since the early, I think, 70s, we were trying to divert newspaper. You know, when we had all the newsstands and everything, there was people tying up their newspaper and putting it in the corner, and then the city would pick it up. But in the 70s, there was also a depression in New York. So there was a lot of cuts, a lot of budget cuts. So they cut recycling newspaper, you know, because it was brand new and they weren't sure if that was going to work. So that was something to be cut, you know. So since the 70s, we've been starting diversion and cutting it. So it's not, you know, new that every new mayor wants to cut diversion of our waste stream, you know. So then, and recycling came out. I think it was in the early 80s, give or take. So it's been like 37 years since we've been doing recycling of plastic and glass, but we've only reached a certain amount of 20% of all of New York City recycling has been diverted. So for 37 years, we haven't been able to really do recycling well. But composting started in the early 90s, mid 90s, you know, with Tom Outerbridge. He did this research with professors from Cornell University, and they took 3 samples, 3 different designs. One was kind of like a windrow. And I think it was in Staten Island. He researched those. The other one was the earth tub. You guys ever heard of the earth tub? It's like the size of the shed here. It's like a big tub. They have them in Governor's Island in the harbor school. And it has a crane that's electric. It's powered by, you know, electrical. And it turns and it moves around. So you add your food waste, but it just continually turns. So it's a big machine, but it costs a lot of money. It works. But once something gets broken or damaged, you have to fix it. And now that company doesn't exist anymore. So whoever has the earth tub is stuck with this big old tub that doesn't work. And the last piece they used was the HotBox. I have this research already, so Cornell University and Tom Outerbridge has these 3 pieces, and the HotBox as a community thing, which is really inexpensive. It's expensive now because of materials, but once you pay for that material to get your system, you don't have to add more materials to it, and there's no power to it. So it's a very sustainable system that has lasted over 30 plus years. So the HotBox that I built in high school still exists now, and I still use it today with my teenagers in West Harlem. And we call that one the OG. You know, when you see it, it's a different color than the ones we have here. So it's a nice example. So, jumping around, you know, the city, when I was doing HotBoxes, we put a few in Brooklyn, a few in like borderline Queens, and then we had some in the Lower East Side. But community composting wasn't really popular in the late 90s. There was a few people doing it, but not everybody was doing it. And since the 90s, right, till maybe 2015, there was a small growth of interest, small growth of need. You know, we started to realize a lot more testing was happening in community gardens, and we started to have more and more metal particles, you know, being taken out of the test, like from the test of the soil. And a lot of community gardens started to realize that a lot of their soil was contaminated by metals, by glass, so people were still growing stuff, but nobody ever tested it. And then when Green Thumb started to test a lot of the soil, started to realize that we had a lot of contamination. So people started to research, okay, we gotta add more compost to our soils, to our gardens. So Green Thumb started to, you know, push for composting to happen. Department of Sanitation started to increase more ideas towards organic separation and composting for the city, and New York City Compost emerged. Tom was the father of that. Department of Sanitation took it in, and we started to have a lot of big facilities composting. That's when Earth Matter started to grow. Growing White Seeds started to collect drop-off locations. we started to have a lot of people, a lot of locations where residents were able to drop off their food waste. And that was all part of the New York City compost. So people started to emerge. What happens when you have a lot of people, diverting their food waste is that locations started to grow. So BK Rot came around, Common Grounds came around. A lot of these small micro haulers and microprocessors started to also emerge. Red Hook started to do a lot of composting. Then you have Domingo, who started from Red Hook to make his own company, Compost Power. And I was still around using my HotBox, but I was quiet. I wasn't really spreading it as much. And then budget cuts came again. So when people started to really get interested in composting, master compost courses was coming out of botanical gardens. All of these different groups were growing and emerging. You started to see a very strong interest and highly, communities being engaged and coming together, and a lot more composting started to happen. And then you have new mayor come in, and they want to do budget cuts. When they cut the Department of Sanitation's budget, the first thing the Department of Sanitation wanted to cut was community New York City composting. And they didn't cut it because they didn't have a plan. They cut it because they had a plan, and they assumed, or they thought, that their plan would be a better plan and service plan for everyone, right? The idea of that centralized diversion of food waste started to become, because they already had recycling, and they thought, okay, we have the recycling, we could do the organics pickup with the same, routes that are happening, and we could serve all of the people who are diverting their food waste in their community. But that's not what happened, right? That's not what people like. That's not what people started to do. So when they cut New York City compost, that's when I came back around. And at that time, I started to work with Lower East Side Ecology Center, and I started to be a part of the Master Compost course. And Pleasantville, Saco, you guys may have known or know Florence from Rodale Community Garden. So Lower East Side Ecology Center paid for 4 HotBoxes, right? One was here, one was with Rodale, one was in Carver Garden, and then one was in Queens in Wyckoff Museum Community Garden. And those 4 HotBoxes were the first kind of re-emergence of the HotBox. And then at that time, when the budget cut was happening, I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to be back into the mix. Not to add any spark to it, but to support all of the groups that were doing it, to support Master Compost Course, to support all of the agencies that were doing compost. Is this better?
Yes.
Yeah. To support more of the community composting that was happening. And I had an idea. I had an idea of if I could jump into this and I could get some city funding, I could actually support community gardens, community spaces, green spaces with free systems. Because if you create the structure, the people will come. There was a lot of master composters emerging, there was a lot of agencies emerging, and I think that having more of this system that I know worked for 30 plus years, and these 30 years that I was around, I knew that some of the problem was that some systems won't last that long. Some systems don't work that well in the winter. Some systems were hard on people's body, and I had none of those issues. So I was like, I think it's a good idea for me to come back, join the march, join the push, and we successfully have been bringing back money to community composting for the past 3 years. So we just heard 2 weeks ago that all of the agencies that have received money from the Department of Sanitation, we're going to receive it again this next coming year. So 3 years in success and 3 years of growth has allowed me to spread HotBox composting as much as possible. And my goal is to continue to give HotBox systems for free to different people, different groups. So I've got it now. So the first year, 2 years ago, I put out 27, which made it around 30 something hot boxes throughout the city. And then this last year I put 57 systems. So I actually reached 100 hot boxes in all 5 boroughs, which is a great success. I have 107.
How big are these boxes?
We're gonna show you the boxes.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna explain how the box works, but I just wanted to give you a little history of how I've been around. People may think that I'm just coming back, but I actually been around. HotBox composting has been around, and how New York City organics, has been working. Because when you think of recycling for 37 years, and only 20% has been really diverted from our waste stream. Composting has been around for less time, and I think that we have more people diverting food waste. We just don't have the data, to really show. And we're not trying to compete with Department of Sanitation. We want to be complementary. So now that they have the brown bins and the smart bins, we just feel like that's not going to be enough to divert all of New York City, organics. And if we have community composting in all of our communities, we could help, reach these goals of zero waste and zero, waste going to our waste streams. Do you guys know how much New York City spends on diverting our garbage, all of our waste, to be put into New Jersey, to be put to Virginia, to be taken to Pennsylvania? We spend $500 million a year. And for 3 years, we've been fighting for community composting, and they only give us $6.2 million. I only get $150,000 to give systems for free, to come and do these workshops, to be a part of the community and create opportunities where young people can have jobs in our community, where we can continue to divert. So I just wanted to give you that quick history and that little number with that big number, because it's the voices of the community that we can increase that 6.2 to be a little more. The work that you guys are influenced with, the motivation of diverting your food waste and bringing it to community gardens, to bring it to Saco, the fact that she has a system that doesn't hurt her back anymore and that she can just kind of process easy, Christine has one in Randall's Island now. Kim has one in Randall's Island. So I have them in schools because this could be a curriculum, right? I have them in middle schools, I have them in high schools, I have them in universities, right? So that university students are actually processing community stuff and their school stuff, but it's part of their education. I have them in churches. I have them in community housing complexes. So in NYCHA, community access, these are apartments where people live for affordable housing and they have a courtyard. And I also have one in the one cemetery, Brooklyn. So the fact of what I wanted to show is that community composting could be anywhere and everywhere. So my goal that Saco was talking about with the Brotherhood Sister Sol is the company that I work for, Brosis. And we have a campaign for the past 2 years, which is 1,000, New York City 1,000 Composting Initiative. And the idea is to put 1,000 systems in every borough of New York City. If we have 1,000 systems, everybody can go 2-block radius and drop off their organics. Every young person can go 2-block radius and do a volunteer work or maybe a part-time job. Every business can actually donate to a community group in a 2-block radius, right? So that now we can start keeping equity in our community. So imagine a coffee shop sponsoring a community garden. That money goes towards paying young people in this community to compost in this garden. And that equity keeps that system alive. That growth will be education. Why do you think a lot of people, why recycling hasn't really increased? Why we haven't been able to divert more plastic and glass and metal in New York City? When you recycle, you take it down to your basement or into your blue bins or green bins, and then you hope that it gets to the factory where it can be diverted and converted into something more plastic or more glass, right? We hope. But a lot of times, we don't know. Most of the times, we don't know. A lot of times, we see what we've done, and somebody else just throw it into the trash.
What's this?
What did that do to you? You give up. Your hope that it reaches where it's supposed to be has been crashed. But when it comes to composting, community composting, you can come in the garden and see your food waste being converted into resources. And I think that experience gives people more hope. The example is in the visual. I don't need to talk about it. You could actually just come to any place and see that resource, that miracle, that transfer of energy from waste to benefits. And that makes people want to do more. That makes people want to divert more. So I think community composting not only is serving the city, it's also educating our community, creating future environmental awareness people. It is helping us to fight against climate change. All of the different benefits that compost can help with. When you have too much compost, you're like, what do I do with all this compost? Now you can go to your street and help all of the street trees. What does that do to the street trees? Whenever it rains, all that runoff water can be sucked in by the trees. Right now, a lot of the runoff water just goes right over the street trees and goes into our sewer. When it overflows our sewer, it then goes into the rivers. Now we're polluting the rivers. A lot of the baby trees that the Million Tree Project have put in, they die because there's no community engagement. So about 25% of the million trees that they've been trying to reach every year, they keep dying. Because in certain communities, there's no a continued resource engagement. Now that we have an abundance of compost right in our community, we don't have to wait for Grow NYC, for Earth Matters, for the Department of Sanitation to bring you compost. You have compost here. And you can just take it to the street trees and help the street trees grow. Because when they are strong and blooming, what else does that help? That's a canopy. That gives shade to all of our streets. That cools down the city. That is a problem. Urban heat island effect is real. And the more street trees that are blooming and growing, the more cooler our cities can be. So I'm a true believer that composting is a strong way to fight against climate change, especially in the city. And I've been doing it for a long time and teaching a lot of young people to do it. And every time I teach them, they become more environmentally aware. And I do it through HotBox composting. Cool? So that was a little history, a little future, a little present. I think you guys want to know how it works. You want to go and see the space and show you how it works? Yeah? I can speak louder over there too, though.
Let's go. Why can't I do it?
It has food waste, which is the nitrogen. It has dry yard waste, which becomes the carbon.
Yeah, we have to do it.
And then you have oxygen, which is where the humans come in. We add the oxygen. And sometimes we have to add the moisture. Your system dries out, you have to add water to give it moisture, right? So decomposition is the natural way that happens in the wild, in nature. Composting is the human interaction to decomposition. Composting is to speed up decomposition which is where the humans come in. So we have discovered a way years and years and years and years ago to speed up decomposition. That process is by mixing the carbon and the nitrogen and then us adding the oxygen. So for many years, the oxygen was the physical labor of human interaction. So you have tumblers, which you have to turn it, right? And there's many things that have a crank. Sometimes you got to spin it with your hand. Sometimes it's like a whole bin you have to turn around, which is great. But a lot of those systems, they have to be smaller because if it's too filled, we won't be able to turn it. So they have small systems. So then people started to think, okay, let's do the 3-bin system, which is 3 open pits. You start off in one, then you kind of turn it there, maybe put it all out, put it back in, and after a couple of weeks, put it to the second pit. That way you can start the first one. This one have a couple of days, you come back, turn it out, turn it in, turn it to the third one so it can finish. This one goes to the second one, and they made the 3-bin system because of that. That was great, but it's a lot of labor on your body. And you can't really fill the pit because think of it's filled, you got to turn all of that system. So a lot of people, when it's halfway, they end up turning it halfway. But most people, a lot of people were getting a lot of food waste from like having the pit system was also a lot of labor and intense. So they thought the windrow, which is a big pile, which you see with growing powers and Brotherhood farms and like bigger places, that one became popular. BK Rock does that too, because you could turn the whole pile little by little, just from both sides. So you have a lot of volunteers take it, turn it, and they move the whole windrow little by little. So it goes 1 foot to the left, 1 foot to the right. Every week they come back and turn this big pile. All of them are intensive labor. On your back, on your body, you request a lot of human interaction, right? And they all open. They're all kind of really exposed. So you have to water it when you start to notice it's kind of dry. Okay? So this system, the way it works, is that it takes away the human turning labor, and it takes away the human adding water labor. So these pipes look like this on the inside. They have 1/4-inch holes, right? All the way to the back. And it's closed all the way around. So the way this one works is that you have to turn your food waste with your carbon outside. You mix it, you chop it really well, turn it outside, pour it in. You continue to do that until you fill it to the top. Some places they take a long time to fill, which means that sometimes the bottom part is probably already finished, and a lot of the top part still needs to get finished, which is okay, because all of the microbials in the bottom, they're going to be crawling up anyway. So it actually helps them increase their ecosystem as they're moving up. Okay? So as these pipes are in the bottom and in the middle, and it's cooking, because it gets really hot in here, this is considered a thermophilic system, which means that it goes above 160 degrees for over 1 to 2 weeks. This is also considered a passive aeration, which means that I do not use any electricity to bring air inside. It's passive aeration. Some systems have a fan that are plugged in, like some big windrows. They have a tube underneath, and they have a fan that blows air through it. That's to increase the time of the compost system. That is forced aeration. This is passive aeration. Okay? So this uses natural causes. As the process is happening and it's getting hot, heat rises. It never comes down. In your house, the reason the fan is on the top is to circulate that hot air so that it cools with the cold air, right? So every time when you go to the top of a building, When you go to the top floor, it's always hotter on the top floor on the stairs. It's all the heat from the building, from anything, always. Heat rises up. As heat is rising, it's going to pull air from where it can. So sometimes you walk barefoot in your hallway and you feel a draft underneath your door. When it's coming towards you from the door, that means that room you're in is hotter than the other room. So it's pulling that cool air from that room. If you feel the draft going that way, that room is hotter, so it's pulling air out from your place. So heat is rising and it's pulling cool air from these pipes. So we don't have to turn this system ever because it's naturally cooling. So the hotter it gets, the more air it comes. The reason why we put the middle ones connected is because in high school you notice that air was coming through here and all of this was doing well. But this part was getting anaerobic. What happened is that the air coming through here was coming out of here because it was finding an escape. So we decided let's stop it and then put a downspout. Since heat can't go down, the minute it hits this corner, it goes back, and as it's going back, it's pulling in the cool air. So now from here up here is getting oxygen. Cool. There's some other pieces to it, right? So as heat is rising, this material it doesn't absorb moisture. So steam, right, is coming up, heat is rising, it's creating the steam. So what happens is that condensation, kind of like what happens in your window when it's raining, sometimes it gets foggy, when you're driving, the inside of the car is hot, there's the steam hitting the glass, and it's building this moisture. When the moisture comes together, the water drops right back down, kind of like rain. So all the steam that this is creating is circulating right back into it. So I don't have to have water because the system is creating its own moisture and it's circulating it right back. So I'm not losing any material of processing in this system. Now here's the beauty, I think, that a lot of people don't know, and I like to talk about it because the pandemic made an interesting discovery, right? And the war in Palestine made another interesting discovery. It's disturbance, displacement. When we're using the windrow or the 3-bit system, we want to create a habitat for microorganisms. They are the workers in the compost process. We're not. We're just creating a home for them. They're the ones doing the work. All the microscopic, macroscopic microbials. The worms that you can see, the roly-polies that the kids love to touch, and all the little things that we can't see. Every time we come in to turn it, we're displacing them. They build a little colony, little community that we can't see, and then we break it apart. Every 3 days, they have to rebuild. Nobody thinks about that, right? Because we want our finished compost. But the habitat that we're creating is displacing them and moving them, so then they have to start over. So what happens to all the microbials and macroorganisms are in there? If you live in California and an earthquake hits you, are you well? Do you feel like you're still healthy mentally, emotionally? Right? If somebody kicks you out of your home, tells you gotta go, what happens to you emotionally, mentally? So we don't know. I think I would believe that microbials, because they create a habitat and they create a colony, that they have feelings. They have a sense of wellness that they need. And by us turning them, we're disturbing their wellness. So every time we come in and turn or do the tumbler or the windrow, we're disturbing an ecosystem. They are not happy. They have to start over every time. Every 3 days they have to start over. And when they finish the compost, when they finish eating everything, you may think, oh, this is rich. But they weren't happy doing it. They were super upset. They're like, this is crazy. just like an earthquake every day, every 3 days, you know? So I want to believe that this system is a very well established place for these microbials to be happy, right? To have a wellness finish, right? I like to call this a resort. They get all the food that they have, all the drinks they want, all the parties. Who knows what DJ or sound or musician is playing in these things, right? But we're not disturbing them, right? So the reason why these are working faster than a lot of the systems because they're happy. Their ecosystem is thriving. Their habitat is super comfortable. So they continue to eat, to make babies quicker than other systems. That's why in this system, between 6 to 10 weeks is all you need. 2 months, you can take everything out of here, sift it, let it cure for about a couple of days, and you can start using it. If you have the right amount of food waste within a year, you can do 3 cycles. I've heard of people with 3-bin systems that they take a year before they can use their compost. I've heard of tumblers that they keep kind of like putting stuff in there, and they come back, the stuff didn't break down, you know, especially not over the winter, so they have to wait more. So a lot of people in those other systems, they'll tell you 3 months is like an average for good, you know, stable system, but for people who aren't taking care of it, it may take 4 months, 5 months. I heard people still wait for like a whole year for their food waste, for compost to be used. And then the one thing that is, those systems you can take little by little, right? So you can see that it's not all done. Take a little bit, sift it, put that, whatever that didn't come back inside, and you have a little bit of compost. It's really all you need for maybe 1 day. This is not like that. You can't take little by little. You have to fill it, wait for the 8 weeks, 6 to 10 weeks, take it all out, sift the whole thing, then you have a big pile that you can use for your whole farm. So instead of getting small chunks, think about let's wait for a big pile in a short amount of time. That way you can use for as many places as you want. Okay? But this is not like that quick give me. This is like be patient, let the resort happen, let the parties go through its party, and then you come out. I've been able to get 26 buckets of finished sifted compost from 1 box. Each one of these holds 1,000 pounds of organic food waste. Yard waste and food waste, 1,000 pounds of each. When you take it out, you get 26 of these finished compost. You do 3 systems, 3 cycles in a year, 1 box diverting 3 tons of food waste from going to the garbage. 1 box. 107 that I have now. You do the calculations how much of that diversion is happening or could happen. If I had 1,000 in every borough, each one doing 3 tons a year, we're doing a really good service to the city. Maybe convince them to use that $500 million and transfer $100 million to create jobs in New York City. They always talk about what are our kids doing? What of all the jobs that are happening? We have the systems, we have the need. You just need to be smart about where you're spending your money. Some of youth employment keeps cutting jobs because they don't know where to put the young people. Put them in all these community gardens, have them compost. When they finish that summer, they're aware of environmental issues and environmental solutions. Right? So that's how the HotBox works. Any questions?
What's the cost to make 1 box?
Good question. So this material, it used to have a company in New York City that was creating this material in the 90s, but because nobody was buying them, they moved. They left New York City. Now they're in Maine and in Iowa, where people have homes. They're building decks out of this. They're building benches out of this. They're building boardwalks in other cities. New York don't have that many places, so they make more business over there. So the cost to make one, materials alone, is around $1,200 because it has to. The material is expensive. Now there's an extra $1,000 just to transfer from Iowa or Maine to New York City. So it costs me around $2,000 to make one. And then when you talk about like how I use the labor, because I already have my job and career with the organization. So what I've done is use my vision, my goal with the organization, so I get paid through them to push this out. So I don't get paid to make things, but I have to pay my young people. So I add another $500 to the cost just so that I can pay the young people. And I can pay like 4 or 5 young people. So one will cost $2,500. It's expensive, but it's like a solar panel. You pay a lot at the beginning, but later on, you actually see you save money. Because if you had other systems, sometimes 3 years, 5 years, you have to rebuild it. Because the wire mesh, the wood, whatever they're using breaks down. Even the plastic tumblers, if you break one area, the whole system is garbage. But this one has proof that it lasted 30 plus years. And the one that I'm using looks just the way it looked when I built it in high school.
So it pays for itself over and over.
It pays for itself over time. If you started collecting from a local business, you actually will make all the money back. You know, depending on what your contract or negotiation is, you can pay it back in a year probably, or less. Saco and Pleasantville, Kim and Saco and the team here have been able to do very smart marketing. The first one, it took them a couple of months to get the funds to get.
Yeah, very short time, right?
The second one was maybe a week, and then the third one was like in 2 days.
Yeah.
Or something. And they did a GoFundMe. And the more of these are out there, right? One, the cheaper I can probably get the company to give me more discounts because I'm getting more demand. But the more foundations, city, everybody starts to see that the investment in this is better because it lasts longer. People are happy using it because it's less stress. More people are engaged to using it, so more education, right? You could bring a whole community school to help empty this out and capture all the worms and do a whole curriculum on insects. You can have a high school or college come in, chop up. When you think about therapy, there's moments of therapy that you're doing by creating this resort for these. The chopping system, we have the process of chopping, right, and turning. There's a physical labor that's not strenuous, but it actually is releasing like your anger, your stress. Like just imagine doing this on a bad day. You know, you're like, oh, this feels good.
Somebody.
I hate that teacher. You know, that is actually a stress relief. So this has become a therapeutic system. Not only is it therapeutic, it's an art piece. When you look at it, it looks interesting. It's a science design that makes you want to ask that question. What is that? How does it work? Right? If I wanted to, because the only part when you're emptying it, I see your hand. When you're emptying it by the whole front lifts up. So you start up at the top, and then everything in the front. Yeah, no, everything in the front lifts up, so you go all the way to the bottom, and because it's closed all the way, sometimes other systems, when you get to the bottom, you can't get it because there's wire mesh, there's wood, it's on the ground, so you actually, some people just leave that bottom part. They they're gonna make a hole into the ground. This one, you can actually get each and every inch and particle of yours. You can get in there, use a broom, put your shovel right to the edge, right to the edge, and sweep every little inch right to your space. So you're not losing any of your material. It's sustainable because even the moisture and the steam is being recycled, reused. So it's a self-sustained system. The brown bins. Everybody is a law that you have to do it. Some buildings have decided to pay for that penalty. So if you don't do it, the city fines you. Some people are like, I don't care, I'll pay the fine, and that's what they're doing. Some people are actually trying to divert the food waste, and the city comes and takes it. The difference and the problem is they're taking that food waste from the brown bins and the smart bins, and they're taking it to biodigesters. Biodigesters are food waste being mixed with sewage water to create methane gas. They purposely are creating methane gas because they want to collect that gas and sell it. The city wants to make money off of your food waste by making methane gas. Once this process is done, there is physical compost that is created, but because it's with sewage water, how many of us know chemicals we put in our toilet or down our sink? The oils, the detergent, the alcoholic drinks, and whatever. That's all going into the same place where the brown bins are going. And they're making this methane gas. So they're saying that finished compost that they're providing cannot be used for agricultural goals. So they are now selling that or giving it away for more big fields. I don't know, but maybe like Central Park grass. So they're spreading that compost in the grass so that the grass, because it's not creating food. So any place that has a big yard or big open field, that's where you can use that finished compost. So most of that brown bins and smart bins are going to those digesters to create this methane gas. Some of it is still going to, I don't think it's Earth Matters or Big Reuse, but I think they're still having it at Freshfields. They're doing the windrow. So some of it is still being organically compost, but most of it is going to digesters. And they're looking to create digesters in every borough. Right now it's in Queens, but they're looking to make it in every borough. One more fact about the HotBox. When we created the HotBox in the Lower East Side, and when Cornell was doing that research about organics in the city, they tested the finished compost. That was in the 90s, like 99 I think it was. And the testing of the finished compost from this HotBox came out to be close to humus. Humus, if this tree fell down and nobody touched it and it decomposed, turned to soil, that compost is humus. That's the most organic decomposition you can find. They found in 1999 that the samples here were close to humus quality. Brooklyn College also did testing. In 2000, I think it was 2006 or 2010, they found the same quality, almost humus. Different year, same process, different mixture. Lower East Side Ecology Center also did the testing in 2015 or 2014, around that time. And they also discovered that this process is close to humus. Why? Because we are not disturbing the microbials, the ecosystem, the habitat that is in here. So the same process of a tree falling down in the forest is happening inside here. that small difference of these organisms being happy compared to other organisms not being so happy is what's gonna make it close to